Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fort Wayne on the Move with me, Councilwoman Michelle Chambers. I am super excited about today's show. We are going to talk about all things the City of Fort Wayne budget. And I'm more excited about our guest. Gentlemen, welcome to Fort Wayne on the Move with Councilwoman Michelle Chambers.
Thank you very much.
How are you both doing?
Doing well.
Good. Silly me. Who am I talking to? I have before me this afternoon Andy Downs, Director of Intergovernmental Affairs. Welcome. And one of our newest city employees, Nick Jordan, Deputy City Controller. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Nick, I'm just going to put you on the spot. I am so excited to have you be a part of the Mayor's administration and to be our Deputy City Controller. Can you share with us, our viewing audience, who you are, some of your background? And sometimes I like for our guests to share how they assume their position and what's maybe your education background, just in case we have a young person that's watching this evening, day, afternoon, or whenever. How does one become a deputy controller?
Definitely. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I'm excited to be part of the city government now, part of the working for the Mayor Tucker. I'm born and raised in Fort Wayne my whole life. Went to St. Charles, went to Snyder, then went to IPFW. Started working for a firm. I worked for a local home builder. Then I started working for a firm called BKD, which is now Forvis Mazars. It's a public accounting firm. Did that for a couple of years, became a CPA, and then had an opportunity to join county government in the auditor's office. Spent the last 15 years there between the elected auditor and then the chief deputy auditor. And recently made a transition to work for a controller roller, and been about a week, and I'm excited.
Oh, we are so excited to have you. And you are working next to one of my favorite people in the world, the controller roller. She is such an intelligent woman. I'm so happy that we have her back at the head of the department. I'm sure you all will do well together. So again, thank you for being here today. And Andy, whether you know it or not, you're one of my favorite people.
Thanks.
I love your brain because it just thinks so strategically. And you know, tell us what the Director of Intergovernmental Affairs does. There's a lot more to you than that, but you know, you give us a little background and then tell us what you're doing right now. And I will say we do really appreciate you at City Council. I really appreciate that you are there every Tuesday with us.
Thank you. I will say this, when I tell people that's my job title, I get two reactions. One reaction is, oh, that's interesting. What do you do? And the other one is, oh, that's nice. Let's talk about something else now, because a lot of people don't like the way it sounds. I think it sounds bad. When Mayor Tucker was talking to me about coming to work for the city, she said, hey, look, there are a few things you got to do. Number one, we got to make sure that we have good relationships with City Council. And that's one of the reasons I come down and see you all every Tuesday. That's why I go to meetings with you all, because we want to make sure that the administration and council are working together as best we can.
Absolutely.
So that's one version of what we have to, one part of what I have to do. The other part is to actually begin to have relationships with other levels of government, whether that's county government or township government, wherever it becomes necessary for the city to interact in a positive way, usually a positive way, with the other governments. And now, fortunately for the city of Fort Wayne, we have lobbyists in Indianapolis and in D.C. And so part of my job is to make sure that we're also working with them as best we can, whether that is working on legislation at the state level, whether it's trying to get support for grant applications from the federal government, whatever it is, that's part of what I'm supposed to do. But as a lot of people have pointed out, you seem to do more than that. And the mayor did say to me, well, also just help me get some things done. And so that's other duties as assigned, I think, the way most people would describe that.
It's a comprehensive position that requires a lot of things that you have to do and make sure that the balls aren't dropping, things are getting done. So how long have you been back with it?
Just since February. Yeah, what a lot of people remember me for is my time at the university. I went out there in 2002. I was there until 22. Then I worked for myself for a little while. Then I came back here. And then people who are, I will say, mature enough, seasoned enough, might remember that I worked for the city in the early 2000s.
So I'm happy that you both are here. It's reflective of the mayor's administration. We are in the fall, right? And what does the fall bring? The budget. So I was so happy that you both were available to sit down and speak with me this evening, afternoon, morning, when everybody's watching. So the budget, gentlemen, it's essentially a planning document of our resources that we take in. And as a councilwoman, as a legislator, I have the responsibility of saying yes or no. So this evening, I want to talk about what does that mean? What does this planning document consist of? And give us a layman's understanding of our revenue stream, and then we'll dive a little deeper. So Nick, do you want to talk about what this planning budget document consists of?
Yeah, and I think on a high level, it's very important because a lot of people may not understand it, that the budget process, the mayor, the city executive, puts forward the budget, and then city council essentially determines with a collaboration, between the executive and then the fiscal body, the legislative body, what the outcome of that budget will be, sets the priority for the upcoming year and the strategy and the guidance for the city government. What this upcoming budget takes into account is Senate Bill 1, which essentially will be a fundamental change to our property and income tax structure. It's phased in over the next few years, 5+ years. And the initial outlooks are that it could potentially put some constraint or reduction in our traditional funding of property taxes.
Okay, I want to take 2 beats back before we talk about SB 1. We're going to have a very healthy conversation about that. So when we talk budget, right, when I talk about my household budget, it's based on my job, my check that I get every 2 weeks. But what does the city's income revenue? Let's break down the revenue. How do we even get to this budget? How much is it? And what's our income? What is our revenue sources? When someone's watching this and they're wondering, well, where did this money come from? So if you wanted either one of you,
your biggest pieces of revenue, and they're shifting over the last 10 years. It used to be your overwhelming chunk was property tax. And then income tax, local income tax, not your state or your federal income tax, but your local income tax has gradually shifted to, we're not 50-50 yet, but we're like a 60-40 split. And so income tax is becoming more and more a bigger piece of the pie. And almost, maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, income tax and property tax will equate. Maybe even we'll see the table flip and income tax will be the majority of it. And then you have what we call miscellaneous revenues. And those can be grants, vehicle excise tax. They can be riverboat gambling taxes passed through from the state. And so there's other sources of revenue that are a more minor piece of the whole revenue mix.
So for our budget, we have 3 buckets of money. We have property tax, income tax, and miscellaneous that can be a combination of grants.
Various could be fees for services, things of that. Multiple different things that are your 2 primarily funding sources between property and income tax.
And so 1 year budget, January to December, right?
Yes.
Right? And we approve it by the end of each fiscal year. So you
have to statutorily, we got to approve it by November 1st.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. No wonder we're all stressed. No, just kidding. So by statute, by law, we have to approve it by 11/1.
Yes.
So what is our grand total of our budget, our annual operating budget?
The property tax, what we call the tax-funded piece, is around $245 million.
$245.
That includes your property tax, and then, not to get too far in the weeds, but your local income tax, public safety. It's a piece of local income tax that's dedicated to public safety. It's around $8 million. But so those 2 pieces, the property tax supported, we call it, is around $245 million.
Yes. And Annie, many may not realize that 75% of our budget, 75% goes to public safety. Is that correct?
You can look at a bunch of years and it's going to be somewhere between 70 and 75, and it's been that way for a long time. What's interesting here, because you spend part of your day teaching, let's have a moment to teach.
Yeah.
One of the things I like to remind people as a former teacher is there are 50 different ways for states to set themselves up. But interestingly, across the country, for the most part, those buckets of money that Nick was mentioning, they're the same. They're the same three that everybody has, almost virtually everybody. And it's property taxes historically have been that largest one, and local governments have always loved that because traditionally those are very stable because people are going to pay their mortgage, they're going to pay their taxes, even if their income goes up or down, they're still going to make their mortgage payment, they're going to make their property tax payment, and that's part of the reason local governments historically have loved property taxes as a source of revenue.
And I like to share with my students often when I'm teaching them budgeting and we're talking about the city's budget. Just imagine if 75% of your budget that you bring home went to one of your line items in your home, and you had to take the other 25% to run your entire home. Let's talk about the role of a controller, why it's critically important that we have a strong controller that understands I got 25% of what's the total again, Nick? I'm sorry.
200 property tax support is around $245 million.
I have 25% of $244 million to do all things. Let's talk about that. What does that look like? Where's that 25% that's left over the different departments? Explain what we do with that money.
Yeah, well, and it's a collaboration. You know, you mentioned the controller may be the one with their hands in the pot and constructing things, but between the mayor, the departments, the city council, that final piece or puzzle comes together with that allocation based on the other aspects of city government. And we talk about public safety and you think police, fire, and then animal care and controls in there as well. But then you have public works and you just have the administration, your back office functions. So you talk about finance and administration, you have payroll, HR, your normal things that any business would have that is making sure people are paid and the HR duties are being handled. You have parks. So there is a lot within that 25% piece, and public works is one. It does have other sources of revenue, but public works is one that most people think of because you think of infrastructure and driving and sidewalks and so forth. And so it does. It is, and it will be even a greater emphasis on the collaboration and prioritization of the city council and the mayor on what that looks like going forward if our funding sources do get tighter.
Yeah, then they have been. And I'll put I'm going to make this statement and then I'm going to go over to SB1. What I like for our viewing audience to understand is interesting. We say it's the mayor's budget, right? But city council, the one thing that we can do to the budget is cut it.
Yes.
Which I don't understand the rationale behind that. I'm not part of the forefathers or the state law. I don't know why, but we only can cut that. So as we're talking about cut, Andy, would you give us, Nick had graciously started talking about SB1. And that with you being our intergovernmental affairs person, I'm hoping that you read so much about this that you can give us a I mean, we have time and we can get in the weeds a little bit. If you would share with us about SB1, and then we'll start talking about, we were all at city council last night and we've learned about, we have our budget in hand for a little while now. Let's share with the audience what is going on with the state, essentially every municipality, if I'm correct in what I'm saying, SB1. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, well, first of all, SB1 affects everyone in the state, counties, townships, schools, cities, all of us. Every one of us is hit by this. And we're starting to understand now, several months after the bill was actually signed into law, we're getting a better idea of what it really does mean for us. Having said that, the basic concept, I take it back to this. Nick mentioned a few minutes ago that we've seen a shift in the amount of revenue that's property tax versus income tax. There's a very interesting philosophical discussion to have about what is the right mix of things. And in Indiana, whether it is the 1%, 2%, 3% tax cap that was put on property, or several other things, including SB1, what we're really saying is very much a shifting of which source of revenue should be the most important one. And for a lot of people, they would say, hey, property tax, I bought my house, I own it, why should I have to continue to pay tax on it? We understand that position. And then they might say, because I'm now retired, I don't have as much money. If you keep raising my property tax, that's going to hurt my ability to live. And so elected officials will quite often say we need to rein in those taxes in a way that that don't hurt somebody too much. But if you're going to rein in taxes, where are you going to make it up? And the idea is, well, let's make it up in income tax. And as long as everyone's doing well, great, the revenue will be replaced. But, and I made this point earlier, property taxes are very stable. Income taxes are not. They have a tendency to jump up and down with the economy. And so we are now in a position, and Nick gets to do a whole lot of this over the next few years, figure out exactly how we as a city will deal with a decrease in property taxes, a shift in income taxes that is one part more useful. I mean, there's more openness, there's more ways to use it, but more difficult to add we do right now. So that's, I know that may not have been the shortest answer I was looking.
I just want to try to make sure that I'm understanding what you just said. So when you said there's a decrease now in property taxes, is that the formula of the allocation that comes back to the city? When you say a decrease in property, is that where the decrease is coming in our allocation? Because essentially the county, look, I'm going to try this, Nick. You get me together. The county collects the property taxes, correct? And then they send that to where? The state?
No. Just from there, it goes to your cities, towns, schools.
But who comes up with the formula would we end up taking back? Because we don't receive everything that we collect on our property taxes. Is that?
Yeah, the way it works, and just to high level, the assessor is going to assess your property on January 1st of a given year.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to take all that pool of assessed value. And then your different councils or boards of your units, your county, your cities, towns, schools, they're going to adopt a budget and a levy. And then we're going to say, well, we want to collect this much levy from a pool of assessed value, and it's going to create a tax rate.
Mm-hmm.
And then people are going to see their assessed value and multiply by that tax rate, and they're going to pay their taxes. And the county treasurer collects that, and then it gets allocated among cities, towns, and schools based on the composition of that tax rate. And so each gets a portion. So the city may get around 30 to 40% of a person's property tax bill in any given year. The schools may get the biggest chunk, and then county, airport, library, city link.
So that allocation, how is SB1 cutting that? Where's this deficit coming because of SB1?
Yeah, what SB1 will potentially do, or what it's expected to do, is it will cause the caps, the tax caps that have been in place, the 1%, 2%, and 3% constitutional tax caps have been in place since 2009, I think it was. They have limited people's taxes, but the way the formula works is if your gross assessed value is going up, you would still pay more. And so the state put in some new mechanisms, not to get too far in the weeds, but what it's anticipated is those new deductions for homeowners and the new credits that will potentially be there, they'll reduce their assessed value in the taxes that are paid. So that pot of taxes that we used to get on property taxes,
Mm-hmm.
it's either going to be flatlined or reduced dependent on if they can shift. And what I mean by that is if I'm a homeowner paying $1,000 in taxes today and SB1 comes through and all of a sudden I only have to pay $700 or $800. Well, can I shift that to ABC company, meaning that the city still wants to collect it,
Mm-hmm.
but the tax rate goes up, and so then ABC company may have to pay more. And so if we can shift, then potentially we'll collect more, but that will remain to be seen because it's all dependent on the relationship between assessed value and taxes levied.
So we know potentially there will be less money coming in.
Yeah.
So with this current budget right now, we had to go, the administration had to go very lean and had to do cuts in the overall budget in comparison to 2025, right? We had to do cuts. So when we were at the meeting last night and we were having a conversation and Pat Roller did a wonderful presentation and trying to help us understand where we landed with our cut. So she had mentioned that we would possibly need to take $8.8 million from our general fund. And then some people are saying, well, it's actually more than that. Some are saying it's $18.8 million that we're losing and property taxes. Either one, if you could take this and bring some clarity to all the numbers that are being thrown out there. Are we able to actually land on what the deficit is? And is it $8.8 million or $18.8 million?
Yeah, I'll start, and then Nick will correct me. I'm going to start there, though. The budget that has been introduced has what some people refer to as a structural deficit. In other words, the revenue that we anticipate coming in and what we want to spend are not the same. In fact, the revenue is less than what we want to spend, but we're filling that gap with cash reserves, and that's the 8.8 that a lot of people.
And when you say cash reserve, that's like a person's savings?
Yeah, the city has money. I mean, like most folks and like most governments, we actually keep some money in reserve because there are times when things happen and we've got to be able to deal with, for example, if a natural disaster comes through, can we pay for those things? If the economy really tanks, suddenly we have money that will get us through the rest of the year. So there's a good argument to be had about how much reserves we should have, but the city does have a chunk of cash reserves, as people would call them.
Yeah, and important point on that is the revenue takes into account estimates, and so we estimated conservatively our circuit breaker loss. If that
2 seconds. Tell us what circuit breaker is. Circuit
breaker is what the constitutional tax caps that essentially limits a person's tax bill. And so we've estimated it's the 1%, 2%, and 3% tax caps that I was referring to.
So just to make this really clear, if you own your house, you know, when Nick was talking earlier about all those different groups that want to try and tax your money or your property, theoretically, if all of those rates came in and they are above 1% of the value of your property, you're only going to be paying up to 1%. That's the simplest. It's not quite that simple. Yes. So that's the simple version of that.
Yes. And so we've estimated $25 million worth of tax cap losses or tax credits, if you want to call it. If those, we think, we're hoping that they'll come in less. And so the reason that's important is if we've estimated 25 and say they only come in at 20 million, so then we got an extra $5 million of revenue. Well, if that could offset the deficit, but in other years past, if we had a similar where maybe the estimates were ultra conservative and revenue came in higher, that may be sitting in the cash. So the cash could just be instances of where revenue came in higher than estimated or expenses didn't pan out what was budgeted. So it's not necessarily a wrongdoing to use the cash. Mm-hmm. So it's potentially for these type of instances. And we're hoping next year that we have to use less cash because the revenue estimates come in better, revenue actuals come in better than estimated, and that will help fill that structural deficit.
And I think it's worthy of being noted because it feels like, and if people are watching, well, why don't they have an affirmative budget? Why don't they know their absolute number? You want to share with us the department that tells us what our actual budget is. But here's the thing, right? We don't know till the spring. Am I correct in that? We don't know. Everything's an estimate at this point. Is that correct?
That is.
But can you share?
Challenge that we have right now that is worse than in some other years. It's a safe way to put it.
The department that is responsible for dictating our money and possibly we will have an absolute number.
Yeah, there's a Department of Local Government Finance that assists the state in compiling the estimates, and that's what has been used in as of right now is their circuit breaker estimate.
Mm-hmm. And you will potentially know an absolute number when?
In the late winter, early spring, hopefully the March-April timeframe.
And that so keep in mind here, in a perfect world, they would love to send that information earlier as well.
They just don't have it.
They don't. So when you start thinking about all the pieces that have to come together, well, the assessors going out and actually seeing what's happening in terms of property and all sorts of other things, there are a whole bunch of moving parts here that make this difficult. And what's making it even worse right now is that we are all trying to get ready for what our new existence will be like under SB 1. And so that kind of slowing some things down.
Yeah. Can you share with us, Nick, what are the other entities, municipalities, not municipalities, but
taxing units.
Taxing units that will be affected by this? Which for people that are
the schools, your county, your library, CityLink, your townships, everybody will be affected. Anybody that collects property tax could be adversely affected by it. Certain tax units will be potentially more affected than others, but it's dependent on whether or not they can receive local income tax and a few years from now. So schools is one that stands out because they may be left out of the local income tax distribution. It just depends what happens in a few years.
And there are people who will say, well, I rent my place, so it doesn't matter to me. It does, because the person who owns that property is also paying those property taxes. But I like to suggest that people go to the county's website, PATI, P-A-T-I, just put that in, Allen County PATI, and you can then actually look at your tax bill at any time, or if you're thinking about buying a house, you can actually look at the data right there. You can see the individual rates. You can see the assessed values all right there in one place.
So we've really had a very robust conversation today. And what I've taken away from the conversation is that we have a very lean budget right now. We are being very intentional, and that we may not be actually have a deficit of 18.8 million, but we will know more so in the spring. That we are still learning about SB1 as we speak. There's a lot of things that are happening at the state level. But I believe that our viewing audience should be assured that the mayor's administration has been very intentional in making sure that what it looks like so far, we don't have any cuts to public safety, public services.
Yeah.
Personnel will remain in place as we are staffed currently.
Mm-hmm.
We are following you all. The administration is following this very closely, and that it's a good budget for 2025. Is there anything that you would close this conversation out with to assure our constituents that we're going to be okay?
I'll start with the budget this year looks an awful lot like 25 budget. That's the first thing. So we were able to basically rein in some costs right away. We're still providing all the services that we said we would be providing in the past. We're still doing that. And we are preparing for what will happen in the future in those 5 years that Nick was making reference to earlier. We don't know what all will happen. The legislature may change the law yet again. So we have to be ready to be nimble and react when possible. But what really matters is the fiscal stewardship that the mayor and the council has shown over the years.
And Nick, as our deputy controller, how would you like to close out the conversation?
Yeah.
Everything.
I think Fort Wayne's in a great place. It has been in a great place, and it will remain to be in a great place. We're collaborating internally. We're working with the state legislators to make them aware of our concerns, and we'll collaborate going forward that homeowners, property owners, they may want to see reduced taxes, but it's what is the fine line between reduced taxes and governmental services, especially on the note we talked about earlier, when 70% of it is public safety. So Fort Wayne's a very safe place. We want to keep it that way. And so you don't want to adversely affect our funding in that regard.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll come back and maybe in the spring talk about where we landed. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for tuning in to Fort Wayne on the Move with Councilwoman Michelle Chambers. Stay tuned. The budget should be passed and approved by November 1st. Is that the date?
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you download it, read through it, and we'll see you again next month. Thank you.